Question in the chat. Hi, is there any way to see all participants? Let me look. I think the way we have it set up, I think it's as a Q&A session, so I'm not sure if attendees will be able to see like a list. Unless it's under the participant list.
Austin, on my screen at the bottom, I have I guess a link that's labeled participants, and I can actually see who's attended so far. Is that because I'm co-host?
Yeah, I think that might be the reason. But we can't see your camera, Rita, but we're able to see that you're here and like see your chat. Not at the moment, Rita. We'll explain once we get started here, but we're going to have it just be us for the first portion of the webinar to make sure we can get through all of our material, but then we'll open it up to a question portion at the end. And then that's how we'll be able to let people speak if they have questions. It's nice to see people joining. We should get started here in about, let's see, 4 minutes or so. And then just so everybody knows, this webinar is being recorded. Hi, Betty. We're happy that you're here too. Good. So yeah, hopefully this information is helpful for everybody. Hi, Michael. Yeah, we'll do. We'll be sure to give Hosky your regards. Okay. All right, we'll get started here in about 2 minutes. Thanks everybody for joining.
Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to access vocational rehabilitation services. My name is Annette Yazzie, and I'm an advocate here at Native American Disability Law Center. Joining me today is Austin Moore, but let me first introduce myself in my native language. Yat'e Adone Nishlinigi Twachitni Nishle Twatnisatni Bashishchin Lizadalchi Dashiche Ado Ashihi Dashinale Akutego Dene Nishle Tutra Da Ayasi Nashya. And I will translate for those that don't speak the Navajo language. I said, I am of the Red Running Into the Water clan, born for the Tango clan. My maternal grandparents are of the Red Goat clan, and paternal grandparents are of the Salt clan. I am Navajo and am originally from Farmington, New Mexico. And I will now ask Austin to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Austin Moore, and I'm an attorney with the Native American Disability Law Center out in our new office in Flagstaff. I'm a member of the Samish Indian Nation. I'm glad you could all join us today. It looks like we have a pretty good turnout. So hopefully my portions don't bore you out too much and Annette can keep you entertained, but I do hope you enjoy our presentation today and are able to learn something new. Also, just to make sure you are aware, this webinar is being recorded for future use as well. So let's get started with a few housekeeping items. Okay, so this is the Law Center's mission. Our mission is to advocate so that the rights of Native Americans with disabilities in the Four Corners area are enforced, strengthened, and brought in harmony with their communities. The Law Center provides advocacy, referral, information, and educational resources to all Native Americans with a disability living anywhere in the Four Corners area who feel that they have been discriminated against because of their disability, abused or neglected, or wrongly denied a service. And this is a little bit of what we do. So we are a part of the protection and advocacy organizations, and we service Native Americans with disabilities living in the Four Corners areas. So we provide free legal assistance, advocacy, and education in areas such as civil rights, special education, abuse and neglect, employment, and housing. And we also provide legislative advocacy by drafting, revising, and enforcing laws on the Navajo Nation, the Hopi Reservation, and other tribal communities across the Four Corners to protect individuals with disabilities. So to start, it would be extremely helpful if you guys could put your name, your organization, and where you're listening in from, as well as your role. So whether you are a consumer of VR services, a service provider, or a counselor, or if you're interested in VR services, if you could put that in the chat box. This is for our reporting purposes. And I do notice that in the chat, I think it's set to all panelists automatically, but if you want to change it to the chat to all panelists and attendees, that way everybody could see it if you're comfortable sharing with everybody. So as for a process today on questions, in the interest of time, since we only have an hour, we're going to be holding off on questions until the end of the presentation in order to make sure Annette and I can get through all of our material. So if you do have questions as we go along, though, you can enter it into the chat box, as someone in the chat might have an answer for you, or somebody else might be thinking of the same question, but they might not put it in the chat box. So we'll try to keep an eye on the chat box as we're presenting, though. We might be able to answer some questions asked if we catch it, but if not, we'll do our best to try and address as many questions during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar. And then if we don't know the answer, we'll try to get you connected with somebody who does have the answer. Also, if you'd like a copy of the slides, we can send out a copy of the PowerPoint following the presentation to your email address. We also plan on posting a recording of this webinar to our website. So if you'd like to revisit the presentation at a later point, like maybe if you have to log off or maybe you get disconnected, be sure to check out our website as well. And then we'll leave a link at the end with our contact information. But all right, Annette, I think we're ready to get started.
Thank you, Austin. Throughout this webinar, we hope that you can come away with some knowledge about VR services. And here are some questions that you'll be able to answer after our presentation. And those are what VR services are, the laws that apply to VR services, how to apply for the service, and who to contact for VR services. This webinar is going to focus on our service area, which is in the Four Corners area. And but we see that many of you here are from all over. So we hope that a lot of the things that we talk about today will apply to you, so you can bring back some information to wherever you're joining us from. And that's another reason that you might want to add your email address or agency information, so that we might be able to maybe tailor the presentation to also recognize, maybe point out information that might be relevant to your agency. Next slide.
Okay, so I'm seeing questions asking about captioning. I don't think we have captioning as we're going, but we can definitely, for the recording, post afterwards, make sure that captioning is available, so you can return. I apologize for not having that at this moment. So to get started, for any history buffs out there, we'll start with the history of VR in Indian country. So prior to 1975, VR services were pretty much non-existent in Indian country. In 1973, Congress did pass the Rehabilitation Act that established the Rehabilitation Services Administration, or the RSA, but this really only covered state VR services. It didn't establish any tribal VR services. However, in 1975, the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act was signed into law. And this was a key event in tribal nations' ability to provide VR programs and services for their own people and communities. Following this, the Arizona Division of Vocational Rehabilitation awarded a 3-year establishment grant to the Navajo Nation to begin serving persons with disabilities living on the Navajo Reservation. So in 1978, following the success of the Navajo VR program, the Rehab Act was amended and established the American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation Service Program, or AVERS, which allowed American Indian tribes to apply for discretionary grants to provide VR services to tribal members on the reservation. So in 1981, the Navajo Nation was the first to receive a grant under this new AVERS program, followed by the Northern Cheyenne and Chippewa Cree tribes of Montana in 1985. The funding was also changed to its current 5-year funding cycle. And with the amendments, they then required state VR agencies to provide adequate VR services to American Indians with disabilities residing in the state, no matter where they lived, even if it was on the reservation. So they needed to provide VR services statewide. So today, the American Indian Vocational Rehabilitation Services is found in Part C, Section 121 of the Rehab Act. So this is why you might sometimes see VR programs described as 121 programs, because it's in Section 121 of the Rehab Act. Next, we'll get into the Native American VR programs in a little bit more detail.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the American Indian VR services. And I think for short, we just say AVERS programs. The federal regulations state that AVERS is designed to provide voc rehab services, including culturally appropriate services to American Indians with disabilities who reside on or near federal or state reservations consistent with such eligible individual strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, interests, and informed choice, so that such individuals may prepare for and engage in employment that will increase opportunities for economic self-sufficiency. And going back to these section 121 that Austin had mentioned earlier, this section establishes that the ABRS grants. Section 121 of this part allows the Rehabilitation Services Administration Commissioner to make grants to the governing bodies of tribes located on either federal or state reservations. The program, the ABRS program, covers 90% of costs, with the tribe making up the remaining 10%. This, and including in this section 121 of this code, it requires that VR services shall be, to the maximum extent feasible, comparable to rehabilitation services that are provided to other individuals residing in the state. This section also sets out the timeline for the ABRS grants. It states that the commissioner approves a grant period for up to 60 months or 5 years. So overall, the Native VR programs must develop individual plans for employment. We typically use the acronym IPE, and including what the Native VR programs must provide is that they must exercise informed choice, provide the same range of services as states. The Native programs must provide services across the service area. They can implement an order of selection, and there is a presumption of eligibility. Other important provisions include in that tribal VR must develop and maintain written policies for off-reservation services. So a tribal VR may establish a preference for on or near reservation services. What that means is that if an individual chooses an equivalent off-reservation services, and those services are at a higher cost than available on or near the reservation, the tribal VR is not responsible for those costs in excess of the cost of the on or near reservation services. In addition, tribal VR may also establish reasonable fees to cover extraordinary costs of duplicating records or making extensive searches. The TVR program should also provide services traditionally used by Native Americans, including treatment recognized by those Native American communities. And I want to provide you some examples, and this is with respect to the Navajo VR services when it comes to Native healing practice services. For the Navajo, they have their program is titled the Native Healing Program. And I'm mentioning that how they label it, because it's not going to, this is not going to apply across all tribal communities. They might have it set up under another name or program. For example, if an individual had difficulty focusing in school because of their disability, they could ask for Native healing services with the Navajo VR program. The Navajo VR program would have to determine that this difficulty is a barrier to this individual's participating in the VR program, which would make this individual eligible. I do want to point out that this healing, native healing program is available only to VR consumers who have already gone through the application eligibility process before they can get these traditional services. And I also want to make sure that I mention the costs related to these native healing services. For the Navajo Nation, there is a $300 cost limit that can go towards or will go towards the medicine practitioners' services. Any expense beyond that $300 would have to be provided by the family. For example, maybe expenses that would exceed the $300 might be maybe providing food and materials that are specific to the type of ceremony that is conducted. And with respect to the Hopi traditional healing services, and I'm actually getting this information from the Hopi VR and their tribe, and they are of the Hopi tribe as well. For Hopi, their traditional healing services, it's similar, but there are some differences that I want to point out. It's similar with respect that they do provide the same services. For example, if a student needed the service, and what would happen is they would indicate that in their IEPs, that they are seeking out a medicine practitioner for their form of healing. And in contrast to the Navajo healing program, is the Hopi cost is, there is a limit of $250. And also, unlike Navajo, these funds are actually applied to food and groceries. These funds typically are not paid to the Hopi medicine practitioner or individual. I also want to stress that these traditional healing services must be based on their disability. For example, if there was an individual who suffered from depression and or anxiety, along with a learning disability, VR would be able to assist in providing those traditional healing services. And for the last bullet point, I just also want to stress that the Native Americans are eligible for both tribal and state programs. So if you live on your tribe's reservation, but your tribe has not established a tribal VR program, you may still receive state services under the Rehabilitation Act. Notice that it isn't an or, it's an and. So even if you are receiving services from your tribe already, states are still obligated to provide you with VR services that maybe your tribal VR can't quite provide. So you want to make sure to take advantage of all the resources you can get. Next slide. I also want to mention there are differences between the state and tribal VR programs. And I just mentioned earlier the native healing programs. That's a difference that the state programs don't provide. And I did go over the costs with you. Also, so I think the major aspect of the tribal VR is that they embrace the holistic approach to services, whereas the state VR doesn't. And The tribal VR services are available to those Native Americans and Alaska Natives with disabilities who reside on or near federal state reservations, where the state would be available through, or the state programs would be available throughout the state. The state VR programs do provide VR programs in every state. In contrast, the tribal that's not the case for tribal VR programs. So not every tribal community will have a tribal VR program. Next slide. So I also wanted to point out the disability statistics. And what you're looking at right now is the national statistics for American Indians and Alaska Natives. And we got this information from at the bottom, you can see the source from the 2010 US Census Bureau. And I also wanted to narrow that population down to the 2 tribes that are in this area. And if you can show the next slide, Austin. There's the statistics for the Hopi tribe and also for the Navajo Nation. And again, there are the sources. But I just wanted to illustrate here these high percentages of individuals with disabilities and why these VR services are especially important in Indian country. Next slide.
Okay, so that was a lot of background information. So get into what exactly are VR services. So VR services, vocational rehabilitation for short, programs are state or tribally run, federally funded programs that offer a way for people with mental and physical disabilities to get the help that they need in order to become more independent and to go back to work. So the program's goal is to enable individuals consistent with their strengths, priorities, and informed choice prepare for employment, with the purpose of maximizing employment, economic self-sufficiency, independence, inclusion, and integration into society. Now, the best part about VR services is that it recognizes that every person is unique and requires an individualized approach to reach their employment goal. You and your counselor will work together in order to establish your goal and identify the services that are necessary for you to achieve that goal. It should also be noted that VR services are those that have the specific goal of employment in mind. So while VR services might be able to help you get, say, hearing aids or glasses, for example, these need to be a part of your plan to achieve employment. So VR services just can't give equipment or provide you with equipment that doesn't help you prepare for your employment plan. So some of the examples of VR services include job counseling and guidance, referral and work related placement services. As I said earlier, they might provide employment equipment or things such as tuition assistance, books and supplies, room and board or transportation, or other assistive technology services and devices. They might include vocational training, on-the-job training, or other trainings. And as Annette described before, tribal VR services might be able to offer native healing services consistent with their cultural healing. So this isn't an exhaustive or a complete list by any means. So some VR programs might be able to provide additional services. However, some VR programs might not be able to provide every service themselves. So it's important that you communicate with your VR counselor and understand which services you are able to receive.
Now I want to talk to you about the requirements of who can VR services help, so the eligibility requirements. VR services are designed to help people with disabilities who are interested in working. And the goal is to assist people with disabilities to obtain or maintain employment. The general requirements are that you must have a disability or a mental impairment that substantially impedes employment, and this individual requires vocational rehabilitation services to become employed. So in short, if you have a physical or mental disability, and if you think you need VR services to help you get a job, you should apply for VR services. Next slide.
Okay. And then I just want to add real quick too, for tribal VR services, most tribal VR programs also require that a person is an enrolled member of either a state or federally recognized tribe, and that they reside in the service area, as Annette described before. So now I'm going to go into like an overview of the VR process, so you know what to expect as you're going through all of this. So to begin, the first step is the outreach and referral stage. So this is the stage where the application process begins with a referral submitted by either you, a family member, or an organization on your behalf. Usually there's a referral form that asks for basic information like your name, your address, more information about your disability. So the purpose of the referral process is for you to express your interest in the VR program and to schedule a orientation and intake interview in order to start that main application process. So the next step is that orientation. So this is where you're going to meet your VR counselor and learn about the services that your VR program offers, as well as its policies, procedures, and practices. You'll discuss and explore your employment goals, discuss your strengths, priorities, and interests, and create an understanding of how your disability creates barriers to work, and come up with a plan that will help you overcome those barriers. So the purpose of the orientation is for you to learn more about the VR program and to decide if VR services are right for you. So after the orientation, if you decide that you want to proceed, this is where you're going to fill out the VR application. So at this stage, this is where you're going to need to provide that documentation that demonstrates your eligibility for VR services. So you're going to want to bring forms of identification, as well as any applicable records or information about your disability, such as records from your doctor, psychologist, or maybe your school. And then you're also going to want to bring in any other relevant information, such as work experience, academic achievements, social involvement, medical and legal history, Social Security benefits verification, if applicable, to help out in developing which services are going to be available for you. But your VR counselor is going to be able to explain during the orientation what documents you should bring for the application. But once your application is completed and signed, the VR must determine eligibility within 60 calendar days. So once you've been determined to be eligible for VR services, you and your counselor are then going to put together what Annette described as the individualized plan of employment. So the IPE is just that. It's a written plan on how you and your VR program are going to work together in order to get you employed. So your IPE will most likely contain your employment goal and how progress will be measured. It might contain the services that will be provided in order to reach that goal, which entities will be providing those services, as well as the responsibilities of you, the consumer, the VR program, and any collaborating agencies. There is a 90-day timeline following eligibility determination in order for you to write and finish your IPE so that you can get started on your path to employment. So let me note again here that there needs to be a specific employment outcome in the IPE. For example, your goal might be to become a teacher or to become a waiter or waitress or maybe a mechanic. It can't be something general like, I want to get an associate's degree so I can start looking for a job. VR services are designed to get you all the way into an actual job placement. So this is why the goal needs to be specific and have that in mind. The next step is the provision of services. So this stage is pretty self-explanatory. This is where you're receiving services such as job counseling or maybe training for interviews, those services that are described in your IPE. So then the goal at the end of this stage is to where you become employed. So once you have obtained employment, now your case is going to begin to move into closure. So closure is generally described as when you're in a job placement and you're being compensated at or above the minimum wage. You also need to have maintained work for a minimum of 90 consecutive days. And this is to make sure that you're in a steady and consistent placement, because it wouldn't really help if you did all this work to get a job, but then you were back to being unemployed in the next week and you didn't have those VR services. So a successful case is going to be when you, your counselor, and your employer all can consider that the placement and performance is satisfactory, that you're in a good, steady, consistent job placement. So then finally, the last stage is the post-employment services. And this is a sort of as needed stage. So post-employment services might be provided if once you've achieved that 90 days of employment, you need some extra services in order to maintain, regain, or even advance in employment. So say you're working in a restaurant as a server and you get promoted to manager, post-employment services are going to be there to help you if you need any additional training, say manager training or things like that. So they're limited in scope and duration, and they're not going to require a complex level of service. Otherwise, it would just be basically opening up a new case for VR services. So if post-employment services were expected, they're usually going to be in the IPE in the first place as something you expect to do. Like if you expect to be promoted at this job, those will be described in there. So throughout this whole process, it's very important that your voice is heard at every step of the way. And Annette's going to discuss your role in the process in the next slide.
Austin, before I do that, can you go back to the previous slide?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, one more slide back. I just want to clarify something, and I saw a couple of questions that I think will clear it up. I wanted to mention here, answering who can VR services help in with respect to general requirements. In the regulations, specifically the citation is 34 CFR 371.6. So that would be Title 34, Part 371, Section 6. In that regulation, it specifically states what disability means and the 3 requirements, and that is that it states that individuals with the disability means 1 is any individual who has a physical or mental impairment, and there you can also recognize what physical or mental impairment means further. 2, this individual who's eligible whose impairment constitute or results in substantial impediment to employment is the second requirement. And the last requirement is that this person can benefit in terms of an employment outcome. So it specifically states the 3 requirements. And like you said, in addition that these tribal VR programs, unlike the state, they require that a person is an enrolled member of a federally recognized tribe and resides on or near the tribal service area. So I just wanted to clarify that. If you could go ahead and go move 2 slides ahead, I think. 1. There we go.
Okay.
Informed choice. So on informed choice, the VR agency and the consumers are supposed to work together to achieve the employment goal. And some things that they're supposed to work on is they're developing the individual's IPE, putting together the contents of the IPE, which is like the employment outcome and goal. Also describe the scope of VR services and any assessments that need to be done. You can move to the next slide there.
Okay, so what happens if I don't agree with my plan? So what we would recommend first doing, if there's something in your plan that you don't quite agree with, is to begin by talking with your counselor. It's always best to start at the lowest level you can and be able to have respectful, open conversations. Sometimes it might not be apparent to your counselor that there is an issue, so you want to give your counselor a chance to remedy anything that might be going on, because communication is really key. It gives you a chance to be clear on what the problem is, and it helps that hopefully you and your counselor will be able to work through it. If there is no resolution with your counselor, then perhaps maybe a supervisor could help mediate the situation and come to a solution. So this is just practical advice. You don't have to do this, but usually starting with your counselor is the easiest way to solve a disagreement informally. So next, one of the statutory mechanisms for resolving disagreements is the grievance process. So under the Rehabilitation Act and its regulations, both individuals receiving services and applicants have the right to review decisions made by the VR program through a grievance process. So the Rehab Act requires that VR programs offer mediation, an impartial due process hearing, or both, and individuals must be given notice of this right to review. So if you do wish to appeal a decision, maybe you disagree with a decision not to provide a specific service, or a decision to reject your application, or any other decision that affects your VR services, you should submit a request for review and indicate 1, the decision you're appealing, 2, the reason why you disagree with the decision, and then 3, whether you wish to resolve the issue through mediation or a hearing. And you're also protected while you navigate through your grievance. So during the review process, the VR program isn't going to be able to suspend, reduce, or terminate your services just because you filed a grievance. So at the Law Center, we have a service which is called the Client Assistance Program that helps people with disabilities with their VR services, and Annette is going to be able to explain that a little bit more.
Okay, so again, under the Code of Federal Regulations, and we left the citations there at the bottom for those of you that are interested. So the Client Assistance Program, or CAP, is a federally funded program. It's designed to assist individuals with disabilities in understanding and using rehabilitation services. The CAP program works to address barriers in the rehab services that benefit all people. It's a free and confidential service. So if you see on this slide, it specifically states what notice must be provided about the Client Assistance Program. And in relation to Tribal VR, Tribal VR must notify individuals in accessible formats who are seeking or receiving services about availability of CAP services, the purposes of services provided under CAP, and how to contact CAP In Arizona, the CAP program for the state is provided through the Arizona Center for Disability Law. And in New Mexico, that service, the CAP program, is provided by the Disability Rights New Mexico. In addition, our law center also provides this program. And the tribal VR programs have an obligation to inform applicants of the client assistance program. When a client asks for the CAP program, this gives the client the authority to bring in an advocate to any meeting or discussion about the services that are being provided by vocational rehabilitation service, rehab services. The services includes advising and informing individuals of their rights in direct connection under programs provided by the Rehab Act, including advocacy services. This means that if you have questions or disagree with the rehab services that you're receiving, you can talk about it confidentially with an advocate. Here at the Law Center, I am that person. I will help you understand your rights and find a solution for what works best for you. Through the CAP program, you'll receive advice, and I, the advocate, will work for you, and I can also look for referrals from other agencies if those services, if you need those services. The advocate in these programs answer questions and clarify services you should be receiving through the rehabilitation services. If you run into any difficulty with your career plan, I or the advocate for these CAP programs are here to assist you. So if you feel you've been unfairly denied a service, you can contact our law center, or if you're also, I just want to point out the availability also of the Arizona state program, CAP program, and the Disability Rights CAP program. And I can also explain why or advocate for a resolution on your behalf. Next slide. And I've gone over these, pointed out the information on these slides already, but you're probably asking what types of disagreements might occur. Some disagreements, or I guess would be a determination maybe that VR has made that one is not eligible for services. Maybe it could be on an employment outcome or goal. Services that our agency will provide. It could be in relation to a closure of a VR case. There are other issues as well, but those are maybe common ones that I can think of. Next slide. So here we are providing you direct phone numbers and websites for some of the tribal VR programs that we've already mentioned, and that is the Hopi tribal VR program, the Navajo Nation VR services, and also we provided the Arizona and New Mexico VR programs as well. And if you provided us your email address, it's even easier now because you can just click on the link here. But I also wanted to point out with the Navajo VR services right now during this pandemic, I did find out that they are almost fully back in the office. as of last week. So they are taking calls. They do take phone calls where you might, for Navajo, you might be able to just call, and if they don't answer, you leave your information, which is your name, maybe your email address, and someone will return your call. There are about 7 offices across the Navajo Nation, so I think they're accessible because there are more locations. In contrast, the Hopi VR has, although they have 1 location, they are working remotely as well. They are available by phone. You can also email them if you go to their website. You want to email them, and they can set up a meeting. And I think, if I remember, that they said they could do Zoom calls as well. If they can't do it by internet service, they can schedule. Of course, with approval from their supervisor, I think they can do in-person meetings right now. So that's the information about the VR VR programs in this area. Austin, back to you.
Sorry, I'm writing something into the chat. So I see in the chat, thank you everybody for participating in the chat. Seems like we have a lot of experts in the chat that are answering questions, so I'm super thankful for that. But make sure you click on the 2 all panelists and attendees if you want to share it with everyone, so then other people might be able to answer, or you guys can have conversations in the chat as well. Because I think if it's just listed to all panelists, then only me and Annette can see. Yep.
Austin, I just wanted to point out that if there's something that maybe it looks like I can see there's Navajo and the Hopi VR counselors are actually attending this session, and maybe they want to add something or maybe clarify something that we had said specific to their locations. That would be helpful as well.
Okay. All right, so how about we wrap up and then we can start opening it up. I'll wrap up real quick. So a few things before we get to the Q&A period. If you made it to the end of this, thank you so much for logging in and listening today. I really hope you were able to learn a few things and that VR services will be able to help you out with your employment goals. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Annette, or you can visit our website at nativedisabilitylaw.org for more information. You can also check out our Facebook page as well. We post updates and information on there too. So you can find us at Native American Disability Law Center. And then lastly, we are a nonprofit organization, so donations really help support the work that we do and the services that we're able to provide. So if you do have the capacity, you can go to our website and click on the Support Us button and donate. It's a tax-deductible donation and helps us to continue providing free legal services, information, outreach, and training to ensure that Native Americans of all abilities are treated with equality, dignity, and respect. So I think that covers everything I have. Annette, do you have anything before we start opening up?
Oh, no, I just want to point out there are questions in the chat box.
Okay. All right.
I also want to say that if we can't answer your questions, and maybe we just, I don't know, a couple of these questions I don't know the answer to, but we can certainly, if you would leave your email address, we can do the research and get back to you on this, on your questions.
Okay, so I went up here.
Betty in the chat box mentioned that we do have 6 121 programs in Arizona.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head which all 6 are, but Navajo Nation and Hopi Tribe are 2 of them. And I think White Mountain Apache might be another one. Tohono O'odham might be another one. But I'm not sure on all 6, but we can get that information to you. Okay, I saw a conversation too about the length of services. And yes, Fiona, I believe, yes, 90 days is just the minimum. So services can be provided longer before the case is closed if they need additional support to get situated on the job. So yeah, these services aren't limited to a certain amount of days or anything like that. I think as Betty described it, it's not one and done, but they're going to be accessible for you as long as you need those services, as long as disability creates barriers. Then I saw Michael requested that we place the disability stats for Hopi and Navajo communities. I'll pull that up right now. Oh, I totally passed it. Right there. I saw that Rita asked, the IPE can be developed with the help of friends and family invited to the IPE meeting to assist as peer supports. Absolutely. As Fiona said, if the person wants them there for support, yes, they can absolutely help with the IPE and be invited to the IPE meeting as well. So the IPE doesn't have to be developed by just the individual and the VR counselor. It's really important that the individual gets all the supports they need in order to develop an IPE that's really going to benefit them.
And Eva asked the question, which Arizona tribes have a VR program right now? Eva, I will certainly get back to you on that one. Unless someone knows the answer here. And Dion Naha with Hopi VR provided her phone number, including that the staff are working remotely due to office closure.
Hannah, I see that Betty raised her hand to talk, so I'm gonna open up her mic because she might have an answer for us. Okay, Betty, I think you're online now.
Yes, thank you. Yes, in Arizona, we have Navajo VR, Hopi VR, as you said, Fort Mojave, which is over in Mojave County on the west side, Tohono O'odham, Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, and White Mountain Apache.
Great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this is awesome having all of you in here with us.
Thank you for that, Betty. Austin, I don't see any other questions in the chat box.
Yep.
Yeah, I see questions about the minimum age to receive VR services. So at the state level, I believe it is 14, as you guys have been saying, but I'm not sure if that's the level for all 121 programs. Up to those certain programs to set their ages, I believe.
Dion, would you be able to answer that question from Hopi VR?
Dion?
Hi, good afternoon. Dion Naha from Hopi VR. As far as I know, our program, we start servicing students at age 16. I certainly can go back into our policy and our regulations to clarify that, but when I came in, that was kind of the documentation I have found. So we start assisting students ages 16, or individuals ages 16 on up. It may be different from other programs. I'm not sure, but I know we do do a referral for the students to State VR as well.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, Dion, I think I might have cut you off if you had something to add.
No, that's it. But I did see Rita's question, and that's kind of her question was, is drug addiction considered a disability if individuals are recovering? I understand under our program, we do have individuals that could qualify under substance abuse addictions. But specifically, if they're recovering, I'm not sure. I don't know if there's anyone else that has more experience in that manner.
Yeah, I think Betty had an answer, and then Elizabeth had an answer as well. Because yeah, it's tough to say for sure the answer to that, but just what the statute says is a mental or physical health or disability that is a substantial impediment to employment.
And Austin, Linda Fisher had a question, which I'm going to follow up on.
Okay.
She says that state VR agencies cannot put absolute dollar amounts on services. You said Native Healing Services have dollar amounts. What is the regulation site saying they can do this? So Linda, I will follow up with you if you could just leave me your email address in the chat box.
Okay, I see Lee is in here too. I don't think your link shared with everybody, Lee, but I'll repost it for you. Lee is one of the directors at Avertech, which is located at the Institute for Human Development at NAU. And they provide training and technical assistance to the 86 AVERS programs located in 25 states. So if you go to their website, they have a lot of great information about VR services. It is focused on the AVERS programs themselves, but if you are a consumer or interested in VR services, the resources there can definitely help you out as well. And then I see Michael asked, what is the Navajo Nation population approximately? Annette, do you have that number on the top of your head?
No, I don't. I don't. But we can certainly get it.
Mm-hmm. Then, if a person is approved for VR services, who provides the employment-related services? So that's going to be listed in your IPE. They might be provided directly by the VR program, or they might collaborate with a different agency in order to provide those services. So it's kind of a case by case, depending on which services are needed. I know there is some certain programs that are starting to partner with businesses for placement. So a VR program might bring up a partnership with a local business in order to help get placements between the two. And I know that is something that some VR programs are beginning to do. Benita said the population of Navajo Nation is at 359,000 according to vital statistics. And then Betty said, we're working hard on establishing apprenticeship programs in more occupations around Arizona. But okay, that's 2 o'clock. I'm still available if anyone else has questions. So I can definitely stick around for a few minutes if anything comes up. But if not, that's all the substance I think we had, Annette. So thank you again, everybody, for coming. And then thank you especially to those of you that had answers for us. We really appreciate that as well.
Austin, can you make our website available? I think it's the last slide here.
Definitely.
Our contact information. Thank you, everyone.
See one question from Janice. If someone receives state VR and can benefit from tribal VR, but their tribe does not have VR, who or which tribal VR can the person contact? So this is going to be dependent on particular VR or tribal VR. So I'd say probably most tribal VRs do require that you live within their service area. So if you're a tribal member living on a specific tribe's service area, you might be eligible as well. Because a lot of tribal VR, you don't necessarily have to be a member of that tribe. So for example, I'm a Samish Indian Nation member, but if I were to live on the Navajo Nation reservation within their service area, as long as I'm a federally recognized tribal member, then I could be eligible for VR services.
And also, I want to mention that the definition of who is on or near the reservation is actually determined by the tribal communities themselves. So, and so that could mean, and also you do not necessarily have to live on the reservation. So you could be living off of the reservation and still get tribal VR services. Dion has her hands raised.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the question, if we, there's an applicant that applies to the program but is not enrolled in a tribe, are they still considered? Do they still meet that requirement of being a federally recognized? Or does it have to be that they have to be enrolled in a tribe in order to be considered part of a federally recognized tribe?
I see. I can't give you a absolute answer, but from what I've seen, most of the tribal VR programs do require enrollment.
Yeah, and I can add to the Navajo VR. I know that Navajo VR, they do require documentation of the It's called a Certificate of Indian Blood.
Yeah.
And I believe also Hopi, I think their document is called a tribal ID, so dependent on the tribe and what rules they've established. I know that the Navajo VR, you have to provide that document saying that you are an enrolled member of the Navajo tribe or of another tribe.
Thank you.
Rita asks, Austin, where did you attend law school? I went to Michigan State, so go green. Got a lot of exposure to the Turtle Talk, being with Professor Fletcher in the ILPC. So I really liked going to Michigan State. Okay, yeah, Betty said if a person lives in the Phoenix area, they may wish to check out SRP. It's that Salt River VR. Thank you again for everybody participating and attending today.
Okay, should we end this? I don't see any other questions here, Austin.
Okay. I'll give,
Yeah, we're getting a lot of thank yous.
I'll give a 30-second countdown if anyone has anything else. How's it go? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.